must be consistent. So what we are calling here for this afternoon is consistency. And I'd just like to state up front that this coalition is not a coalition against religious freedoms. It has no intent on barring or trying to stop the practice of religious freedoms. That's protected under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada. We are completely for religious freedom.
Islam is evil! Ban Islam from Canada! Islam is evil! Ban Islam from Canada!
Ron, what's going on, man?
Join the Trump campaign to ban Islamic immigration from America! Join the Trump campaign! Ban Islam!
What we are against is the practice of religious practices and religious beliefs in a public school system that is funded by the people of Toronto. Now this case, we shouldn't even be having this discussion here today. This was resolved in 1988 with the Ontario Court of Appeal, which ruled that there was not to be any religious practices, observances taking place during school hours at a public school. Now, my colleague had mentioned here that there is systemic discrimination that is shown to other people of other faiths, particularly Christians. I know for a fact, as a minister, I have visited a number of high schools in the Toronto area and in the GTA, where Christian students have informed me that during Christmas, when they wanted to share something of the Christian story about the birth of Christ, they were barred by the principal from doing so during school hours because this was seen as a violation of the Education Act. But the same students informed me that during Ramadan, during the season of Ramadan, Muslims were allowed to talk about their faith, they were allowed to distribute Qurans, etc. Now, the fact that this is happening in a Toronto school is of great concern for us. It's not a Catholic school here, we're talking about a public school. These prayers are not taking place before school hours, during lunchtime or after school hours, the way Christians and Jews and everyone else would be the time that they would meet. They're meeting during school hours, and this is of grave concern for us. We're also concerned about the fact that during these prayers, there is definitely a segregation that takes place between the men, the women, and as has been mentioned earlier, menstruating women. Now, this may be part of the Islamic faith, and I believe that it is, but this does not have a place in our public school system. This has a place in the mosque, this may have a place in certain forms of Orthodox Judaism, but definitely not in a public school system. And so what we see here is actually not so much an accommodation, what we see here is actually a covert violation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which sees all Canadians as equals, and that includes men and women.
Come and ask you, why is it that men pray in the front and women pray in the back? And they're always angry when they ask you that question. I want you to introduce me to this guy who taught you that there's something wrong with praying in the back, that it's offensive to pray in the back for some reason. I want to meet this guy, and what's his logic, what's his reasoning? Why do we accept this argument that if you're in the front, you're better than the one in the back? Yeah, maybe in the buses, when they did it in the Americas, it was different. Yeah, the coloreds are in the back and all that. But this is not the same situation. And you're a Muslim woman, you know how women pray. Did you consider for a minute what would happen if women prayed in the front and the men prayed in the back?
So what we see here is actually not so much an accommodation. What we see here is actually a covert violation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which sees all Canadians as equals, and that includes men and women.
So should women be pastors and elders? Well, in a social climate of complete equality in all things, the biblical teaching of only allowing men to be pastors and elders isn't real popular. Many feminist organizations denounce this position as antiquated and even chauvinistic. In addition, many Christian churches have even adopted the politically correct social standard and have allowed women pastors and elders in the church. But the question is it biblical? The answer is simple. No, it is not. Women are not to be pastors and elders.
And so our attempt here today is to communicate this great concern. If this gets passed in the school, in Valley High School, where is it going to stop? Where is it going to end? And another thing that has not been mentioned here today is also what is disconcerting is that during, many people are not aware of the fact that during Muslim prayers, the first surah is recited, Surah Al-Fatiha. And in that surah, there is a systemic cursing of the Jews and the Christians, where it talks about do not guide those upon whom your anger rests. This has been understood in Islamic history by famous commentators like Ibn Kathir as a reference to the Jews. And those who are misled, or those who have been led astray, this is a reference to a covert reference to the Christians. So this is very disconcerting to me as a Christian, and I'm sure as with my Jewish friend, that these prayers are taking place in a Toronto school which vilifies Jews and Christians daily every time these prayers take place.
I'm the one teaching. He said, though we, or what? An angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed.
But even if we, or an angel from heaven, were to be a preacher to you of good news other than that which we have given you, let there be a curse on him.
So this is very disconcerting to me as a Christian, and I'm sure as with my Jewish friend, that these prayers are taking place in a Toronto school which vilifies Jews and Christians daily every time these prayers take place. So once again, we are not here to criticize the free act of religious expression, the freedom of expression of that religion. What we are here to say is that we see the Toronto District School Board as acting in favoritism. They are giving preferential treatment to a specific religion, which they will not accommodate to other religious groups.
And would you say, Dr. Costa, that Sharia has actually arrived in Toronto, Canada?
That which? Sorry?
That Sharia law has arrived in Toronto,
I would
Canada?
say it has at a grassroots level. And it begins from the bottom up, and it begins slowly. And so if we don't take care of it now, I think our Prime Minister alluded to this when he dealt with Islamicism. If we don't deal with it now, we are going to be facing a giant in a number of years. And it's going to be our children and our grandchildren who are going to pay the price.
But how could God be praying to God? How could three be one? It doesn't make sense.
Don't get what you're saying here, Patrick. Not picking up what you're laying down here, Patrick. Could you use an analogy, Patrick?
The most simple illustration that is undeniable and irrefutable, by the way, a triangle.
Yeah.
If you take one triangle, equilateral triangle, it has three sides. Each side is distinct from the other, and yet there's only one triangle. A triangle.
Yeah.
If you take one triangle, equilateral triangle, it has three sides. Each side is distinct from the other, and yet there's only one triangle.
Partialism, a heresy which asserts that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are not distinct persons of the Godhead, but are different parts of God, each composing 1/3 of the divine.
Tell you what, friends, I don't know about you, but I don't want a Muslim doctor. I don't want a Muslim pilot. I don't want a Muslim taxi cab driver. I don't want a Muslim bus driver.